much for taking your time to join us for this information session today. Today, we're mostly going to be talking about the 2023 spring and summer sessions of the one-on-one mentorship and the Future Scholar program. Just before we get started, a little bit about the agenda today. We're going to cover a little bit about what CCIR does as a whole, jump right into talking about sort of the CCIR Academy. This is where both our research programs are located. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the general sort of features of our programs across these two programs first. So talk about the Academy as a whole, then dive into two of the specific programs we offer, namely the Future Scholar program, which is our small group research program, and our one-on-one research mentorship program, which again is one-on-one. So what do we do here at CCIR? Well, at CCIR, what we're really focused on is building bridges between academia and the wider public. So to this end, we do quite a bit more than what we actually do there at the Academy. So as you know, at the Academy, we offer these intensive online research programs. But beyond this, we offer a number of podcasts, fellowships for graduate students, as well as postdocs, a number of events over the year, including essay competitions, policythons, hackathons, and so on and so forth. So those things are all quite fun and interesting. You can find them on our website. If you are a subscriber to our newsletter, which you would be if you've downloaded the brochure from our website, which if you haven't, you should. It's called the prospectus on the website. There's buttons for it all over the website. Do download the brochures. This way you will be registered in our email list, as well as you would have access to sort of the most vital piece of documentation, both for your information and both for your subsequent application. Okay. So let's talk about the CCIR Academy. What are we doing here at the CCIR Academy? Well, we're offering intensive research programs in an online format where brilliant students like yourselves get the opportunity to work with some of the leading faculty in the world from places like Harvard, MIT, Oxford, Cambridge, and so on. The goal here is really to provide an extremely rigorous program that we can feel like some people are disturbance in them. Please do mute your microphones if you haven't done so already. So what are we doing here at the Academy? Well, we're offering intensive online research programs for gifted students like yourselves. And what we're really trying to do here is give students a sense of what doing academic research in a specific area of study that they're passionate about is like. And we're trying to give them a sense and use this sort of methodology, this pedagogical method, as a way to really develop certain research and academic skills in our students and to sort of build their profile as a burgeoning academic. To this end, we really do try to maintain very rigorous standards in our admissions, both at the level of admissions and at the level of academics. This you will see in a second. This is also why we work exclusively with some of the best faculty in the world, from places like Oxbridge, as well as the Ivy League. All of our faculty members are going to be current teaching faculty members from these universities. So you won't just be working with PhD students, you'll be really working with some of the cutting edge researchers and professors around the world. The last thing I want to touch on here that I'll circle back to in just a second is the emphasis that the CCIR program places on actually getting you guys, giving you guys the support to engage with the wider academic community. One of the ways in which we do this is through our expert publication support. We really do support all our students to try to showcase their work to the best extent possible. And again, I'll circle back to this. So when I say that we work exclusively with some of the best faculty in the world, I do mean that we're working exclusively with faculty from these 10 universities. So we're working with people from places like Oxford, Cambridge, MIT, Harvard, Brown, Stanford, Columbia, UPenn, Princeton, and UC Berkeley. I think there's a UCLA peppered in there somewhere, but you get the basic idea here. So, as I mentioned, one of the main emphases of the CCIR program is to support our students with their publications. So both of our programs have as its ultimate outcome. So everything in both the programs, if you enter in, you're always going to be working towards a final research project. In most cases, your final project is going to take the form of a paper. In some cases, you can do poster presentations and so on, depending on what your ultimate goal is. However, regardless of what your end product is, we're going to try to support you and get you showcased. Publication, however, is very difficult. So I say this as a current PhD student who hasn't published at the professional level. So publication at the professional level is difficult for a number of reasons, not only because of the low acceptance rate of these journals, but also because the publication process is itself somewhat dark and somewhat difficult. What we try to do here is provide you the support so that you can be clear and confident in the way that you approach your publication. So we do provide quite a lot of support just in terms of editing. But we're really quite sort of, we've developed a system where we are able to help students target the appropriate venues for publication. So for most high school students, you're probably not looking at professional journals. We've had 1 or 2 cases of high school students who ended up publishing at the professional level, but this is really, really the exception. We're looking mostly at undergraduate and some cases graduate conferences, journals, and workshops. We have developed a proprietary publication database, which we use to direct students to particular publication venues. So we would know that there are certain conferences that are appropriate for certain topics, what's happening in sort of the wider academic circle, and we guide students towards different venues. Furthermore, once you're done with the program, we do provide continued editorial support, giving you feedback on formatting as well as content as you're on the road to publication. Ultimately, this means that our students really have an extremely good track record in their publications. Just this past year, our students have been accepted to places like the IAEE at MIT, the Sigma Psi at Cornell, the Dartmouth Undergraduate Journal of Science, and so on and so forth. The last thing I want to talk briefly about here before I turn into the details of the programs is talking a little bit about how a program like ours can be used to showcase you, especially within the field of undergraduate admissions. So I should say, I understand that some of you guys might actually be undergraduates, in which case we would be talking here mostly about graduate admissions. But graduate admissions, I think, is a lot more straightforward in terms of how research fits into the picture. Research, however, is really a new trend within undergraduate admissions. I'll show you guys some statistics in just a second. But we do think that the statistic has something to do with the fact that schools have transitioned to the test optional mode of admissions in the past few years. The rise of test optional admissions means that students who used to be able to showcase themselves academically using the SAT or the ACT are no longer able to do so. This means that those students have one less mechanism by which to showcase their academic excellence. The question then is, beyond the GPA, what other ways can I, as this sort of student, showcase myself? And it's within this context that a program like ours becomes really quite beneficial, because on the one hand, we will be working towards this publication. Hopefully we can get you showcased in some sort of conference or workshop. Obviously, we can't guarantee that. However, you will have participated in a very much selective research program, and that alone can be put on the CV. Furthermore, because of the small class sizes of our programs, we have one-on-one in one hand, and then the group course is capped at 5. Our programs really provide a very intimate setting wherein students are able to get to know their faculty, and this becomes a really great basis for securing a potential letter of reference from a leading academic. That being said, all our letters of recommendation are going to be authentic, which means that our faculty retain the right whenever to not offer a letter of recommendation. So again, this is all going to be merit-based, including the research and publication, as well as the letter of reference. This is part of our commitment to transparency and to just sort of doing honest work here. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about all of these things, about the post-program support that we provide in CCIR in terms of the editorial of your paper, how we support publication, how we support the letters of reference. One last thing I want to talk about in light of what we just spoke of about the undergraduate admissions and how to showcase your research is that we actually do provide support as well. And this is ongoing support for all our past alumni in thinking about how to utilize their research experience within their supplemental essays. So over the past year, we've helped a number of students work on their supplementary essays for undergraduate admissions. These are the essays where you're really writing about your experience, your journey, your findings, the impact of your research. And we really do provide fairly professional consultation and support for this. This is the admission statistics that I wanted to mention earlier on. So according to admission site, they found that the most recent UPenn admission statistics states that 30% of its most recent class of freshmen for the class, actually, I don't think this is the most recent anymore, but the previous round of the freshman class engaged in some form of high school research or another. What you'll also see is that universities like Harvard, MIT, UPenn, Yale, and Columbia all now have dedicated guides for student researchers on how to submit their work. Excuse me. Excuse me. These dedicated guides for student researchers on how to submit their work, we see this as reflecting the ongoing trend towards research within undergraduate admissions. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the university admissions results of CCIR alumni. These results are, it's from data that we gathered for CCIR alumni from the spring of 2020 to the fall of 2021. We are currently in the process of gathering new data so that this will be updated. This data was gathered from student self-reporting, as well as any publicly available admissions results. This means that we did track people's sort of social media and so on, and their LinkedIn, especially to see where they ended up going after attending CCIR. What we found, the results were actually really quite astounding for me personally. We found that 42.9% of our US applying alumni went to top 10 US universities by the US News ranking system. 32.2% of all CCIR alumni went to global top 10 universities. And then the results are still staggering when you consider top 30 US universities, where 80% of our alumni got into. Obviously, we can't take all the credit for this. Our students come in brilliant and they leave, we just hope, a little more brilliant. So we do think that research plays a deciding factor in the admissions process for a lot of these cases for just the reasons that I mentioned earlier on. Okay, at long last, we will now talk about the details of the program. And this is, I take it, the main reason you guys are here. So we offer two basic programs, the Future Scholar and the OneonOne. The Future Scholar is our small group research program, a highly selective online 2 to 5 student research program that's designed and taught by some of the leading faculty in the world. For the upcoming session, we're going to be offering anywhere between 40 to 50 different courses and everything from STEM to business to the humanities and the social sciences. So how do these programs work? Well, as I mentioned, 2 to 5 students will be paired with one professor, as well as a PhD student as the TA. Each week, you'll meet once with your professor and once with your TA. And over the course of 13 weeks, the ultimate goal here will be to build up a research paper for each and every one of the students. This means that it's not the case that all 4 students or all 5 students in one course will be producing the same project. In the majority of cases, students are producing their own independent papers. All of these courses are research focused, and I'll say a little bit more about what that research will look like depending on the field that you're in. But as a general rule, the first 6 to 7 weeks of this program will be focused a little bit more on teaching, and the latter 6 to 7 a little bit more on research. Now, obviously, research looks very, very different depending on the field that you're in. Research in applied mathematics, for instance, in the applications of mathematical optimization, a class we offer with Benoit Lagarde from MIT, the research that you're going to be doing there is going to look very different from the research you're doing in computational biology, in philosophy, in history, and so on and so forth. So as a rule, there are 3 basic forms of research that students engage in at CCIR. As you'll see, a lot of our courses are really quite computationally driven. So you'll see that in our robotics course, there's a lot of modeling going on. In our biology courses, there's a huge emphasis on bioinformatics and data science. Likewise, in our physics courses. So this is because, given the online nature of the format, data-driven and computationally driven forms of research are one of the few ways that we're able to actually conduct what is known as primary research. So this is one track that often students go in. You can really be able to tell what kind of research you'll be able to do just by looking at the course details that's available on the course catalog. Beyond this, we do have primary research that students are able to engage in through things like social sciences by doing things like surveys. So this would also count as primary research in that respect. Third type of research is really the meta-analytical form of research, and sometimes known as literature reviews. So literature reviews are sometimes considered secondary research insofar as you're pulling on existing work and generating conclusions on the basis of looking at the field as a whole. That being said, depending on the field that you're in, your meta-analysis is going to count more or less as primary research. So think about it this way. A meta-analysis or a literature review of ongoing oncology research is going to be of very different value and very different status than literature review work being done, for instance, in the cognitive sciences. In the cognitive sciences, literature review is really one way of doing theoretical work in the field. So you can ask me a little bit more about sort of what these different forms of research entail, but the basic idea here is that all of our courses are extremely research driven. I won't pause on any of these slides for you guys to look at. What I encourage instead is for you guys to download the course catalog and look at the courses there. All the information about the courses, specific tuition and scholarship for these courses as well, is all on the course catalog. So this level of detail of information is better if you just go look directly on the catalog. Okay, so we are currently in the early admissions period for the Spring Future Scholar cohort. The early admissions will end on March 1st and the regular on March 15th. The programs will start late March and early April. As a whole, our aim with admissions is really to make sure that we get students who will thrive in our programs. These are rigorous programs, and for that reason, our admissions process is also quite rigorous. The first step is that to apply to these programs will be to fill out an application and send us your transcript. Alongside these materials, you can send us any supplementary materials that you might want to help showcase you, such as standardized testing, write examples in the area relevant to your application, as well as CVs and certificates. The supplementary materials are optional and truly optional. The only thing I would encourage here is to submit a CV because that gives us a really holistic overview of you as a student. The CV is also known as a resume sometimes. Qualified applicants after the first round will be invited back for an interview. This interview is mostly going to be a conversation about your passions and aspirations. It's to see if you're a good fit. We more or less already know your academic background. In certain cases, we'll just sort of double check, ask a few questions about your background, and most of this should be stuff that you already know. The final admissions decision for both programs is going to be made by the professors themselves. So the top applicants would then receive an offer. Okay, so that's about it for the Future Scholar Program. Let's talk a little bit about the OneonOne Research Mentorship. So the OneonOne Research Mentorship, as the namesake suggests, is between one student and one mentor focused on one project. The benefit of this particular program is that this allows for quite a lot of customizability and flexibility that is just built into the program. So suppose you're interested in something that's not covered within the 48 courses offered at the Future Scholar Program. Suppose you're interested in 13th century monastic history or in topological physics. Well, beyond the 50 or so faculty that work with us through the Future Scholar Program, we work with about 200 faculty members across these universities focused on all sorts of things. This really allows us to offer pretty much anything under the sun through the OneonOne mentorship program. Furthermore, the OneonOne mentorship is not bound to a concrete schedule or structure. So unlike the Future Scholar Program, which runs 3 times a year, with this sort of 13-week program, the OneonOne program runs instead on a 14 sessions structure that you can flexibly structure according to your needs. This means that we offer you 14 one-hour sessions that you can take over 10 weeks, 14 weeks, 20 weeks, depending on what works best for you. This is what we mean that this program really allows you to study the way you want and study what you want. So again, the goal here for the OneonOne program is to make sure that our students are able to find the right mentors and have the perfect experience. To this end, we have a slight modification of the admissions process for the OneonOne program than from the Future Scholar. So the OneonOne program is going to require students to schedule first a meeting with us at the very outset of their application. This meeting is non-evaluative. It really is just primarily informational. What we want to learn from you is why you want to do the OneonOne program and what areas you're interested in. We want to give you a little bit of guidance on how to apply for the OneonOne program, how to make yourself presentable for the professor, because the OneonOne program especially is going to be dependent on your professor thinking that you're a right match to them. So we want to make sure that your understanding of the program and your expectations for it are realistic and they're suitably well developed to sort of create a good mentorship. At the subsequent steps of this process are really quite standard. We ask for your application just as we do in the Future Scholar Program. We invite you to an interview just as we do in the Future Scholar Program. And with that information, we'll then bundle it together and circulate it with relevant faculty members. So if you're interested in topological physics, we'll send it out to maybe the 2 people we know who do topological physics and be like, look, so-and-so is a brilliant student. They've done these and these things. This is their interview. This is their application. Let us know if you're willing to take them on. So once that's done, you'll actually get to meet your professor before you even finally confirm. So there's no monetary commitment up until the point that you meet your professor and both parties say, okay, let's go ahead. So I'll say quickly one last thing about admissions. Our students coming in, as I said, are really quite brilliant. The average GPA for our incoming students is about 3.9, the average SAT 15.16. These are daunting numbers, but I do want to say, don't be too daunted by them. We are quite holistic in our evaluation of particular students. What we care about at the end of the day is whether or not you will thrive in our programs. Sometimes students with a lower average GPA might nonetheless do that. For instance, if you're applying to a history program and we notice that your math grades just aren't great, we really wouldn't care about your math grades at all at the end of the day. What we care about is how good your history grades are, how passionate you are in that specific area. With this, our ultimate admissions rate on the right-hand side, you can see is roughly in the 20 to 30% range. We really do try to keep the admissions rate quite consistent through both the programs, and that's why you see these numbers. So I'll share my email actually in the chat, but I'll just mention two more things before we turn to Q&A. Again, the admissions deadline on the bottom right, you can see is for March 15th for the spring. For the summer, you can already pre-apply to the summer program. So there's detailed instructions in the brochures as well on how to do that. You just really go through the same process, actually. So there's no huge difference except you get admitted to the program first rather than getting admitted to particular courses. So summer admissions is not going to be until June 1st as the final deadline, I believe. And on the bottom right, you can see here my email.